Okay.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so hi, thank you for agreeing to do this with me.
No problem.
So I picked to do an interview with you because I see you as a very powerful leader, and I thought this would be a great chance to talk to you a little bit more. So explain a little bit like your past years in leadership. Like, what have you done over the years?
My leadership experience started when I was younger than you, probably like junior high school, getting involved with student council, being part of a 4-H club, and being in, kind of voted upon leadership roles in both of those situations. So more assigned leadership, but taking on roles as a president or a secretary or treasurer of a club, things like that. So starting to understand, what it meant to be a leader in front of a group of your peers and things like that. I also think being the oldest child and oldest grandchild in my family puts you into a natural leadership position. And so I think that's probably where my experience with leadership started. As I got older, I became a camp counselor. I worked as a lifeguard. I was teaching swimming lessons. So kind of all of my jobs, even when I was growing up as a teenager into university, they all kind of led in sort of a leadership role, a teaching role, in a way. When I was in university, I worked again for 4-H. I did a couple different roles there. I worked in a camp leadership position. I ran the summer camp program and things like that. And I was a teacher. I went to school to become a teacher. So again, just kind of a natural leadership position and just in the role that you're playing as a teacher. But it was when I started to build my own business that I really saw leadership as something that was vitally important, and that it was something that I excelled at, that I was gifted at. And running my own business, working with a volunteer sales force, having people look to me not only as their leader, but I also had to step up as a leader. So it wasn't just a naturally given position. It was something, or an assigned role. It was something I had to live up to. And in order to make my business work, I had to become that leader. And so that's, for 28 years, I've run my own business and been in that role. But I always think leadership is part of the gifts that I've been given, and just leaning into the strengths that I have and always working in that role.
Yeah. Well, I see you as an important leader in my life because just over the years, just watching you with your business and everything, it's very empowering, especially with having a big family and being busy all the time. I feel like it's very empowering to see like juggle that life balance. So yeah. My first question I have for you is, what aspects do you look for when you're trying to build that like big community of leadership? Do you have any like values that you bring into like a leadership job every time you go into it?
I think one of the most important things as a leader is to place value on people. And I think if you can value the person for who they are and just what they can bring to your team just as an individual, and not necessarily a skill set or anything, but just who they are. So their personality, the traits that they bring with them. And I think just placing value on people first, I think, is so important as a leader, especially as a leader of people. Knowing that every person's going to bring something different to your team, and that we need all of those different personalities and all those different people is so important. And just letting them be themselves, and for me, really wanting to find their strengths and help them to develop those so that we can contribute to the team. And I really think that's important, is you need people too that want to be part of a team, that want to work with other people, that want to see that they can contribute and make a difference and add value to other people. I think those things are so important when it comes to building a team. I also think it's super important when you're looking to build a team and build a community that you're looking for people that place value on cooperation, collaboration, that they see those skills. Those are things that can be taught too, but if there's things that they naturally bring to the table, I think that's super valuable and important when you go to build a team.
Yeah, one part of this class that I've done is we did like little leadership statements. So we had like 30 different words and they had their definitions. And I had to pick 5, which was so hard, and try and put like a value to that. And I've been trying to like use those in my daily life. So yeah, I feel like that's a good incorporation to building that community, having those values in that one person. So
Yeah.
I really like that.
Okay.
My next question is, in my leadership class, we talked about 5 dysfunctions of the team. So 1 is absence of trust, 2 is fear of conflict, 3 is lack of commitment, 4 is avoidance of accountability, and 5 is inattention to results. So we deal with that a lot as a coach, as a cheerleader. Have you ever like come across these certain things in your team, and like how do you kind of deal with that, like move forward with those?
100%. Okay, I'm going to get you to read each of them to me one
Yeah,
at a time, and
yeah.
I'll respond to you. Because as you were reading them, I'm like, oh yeah, totally
Yeah.
relate to all of those.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first one.
Okay, first one, absence of trust.
Absence of trust. 110%. I think as a leader, in order to get your team moving in the same direction to achieve a common goal, they have to trust you. They have to trust your vision. They have to trust what you're saying, your actions. If they don't trust you, it's going to fall apart. And I, in turn, have to trust them. I have to trust that they're on board with what we're doing, that they do, when they say that they want to move towards that goal, I have to trust that they really do, that they're not just playing me. And I've definitely had experiences in my business where that trust has been broken. And as a result of that, I've seen my business crumble. And it's really eroded my confidence as a leader too, because knowing that my people either didn't believe I trusted them, or in reverse, didn't trust me, was really, really difficult. One very specific example was I had a leader actually embezzle money from my company. And just knowing that there wasn't a level of respect, and knowing that this person that I had trusted so much, I worked very closely with them, didn't respect or trust me enough to come clean about it, be honest about it, and ended up where it ended up was very difficult, and it really eroded my belief in my team and in my company, and it really destroyed us for quite a while. So trust is super, super important when you're trying to build a team, 110%.
The next one is fear of conflict.
Yeah, for sure. My personality style doesn't really like conflict, so I try to do everything I can to avoid it most times. I'll be very honest, that's kind of a weakness that I have. But I think as a leader, you have to put those fears aside, because there's going to be times when you are going to have to call people to task, when you're going to have to hold people responsible for things. It's probably sometimes for their benefit, but they might not see it that way. It's going to be conflict. You just have to put it aside and do it anyway for the betterment of the bigger picture, the bigger team. Sometimes you avoid conflict too because maybe you're wrong, and you don't always want to have to own that you're wrong. But when you can deal with conflict effectively, when you can learn how to overcome that fear that conflict isn't always a bad thing, that having different opinions and having different ideas of how things are done can lead to growth, because maybe they think of something you didn't, and it's not always conflict in a way that's going to hurt you, but that's really hard to get to that point. It takes a lot of growth and maturity, but yeah, fear of conflict is real when you deal with people.
Yeah.
It happens.
Next one is lack of commitment.
Yeah, for sure. So my business is network marketing, direct sales. So for 28 years, I always tell people that I work with a volunteer sales force. I don't hire or fire anyone. I am just given this group of people that have chosen to join my company, and it's my job to help them build their business to achieve their goals. And one of the greatest difficulties in that, because there's no hiring or firing or accountability to anyone but themselves, there's often quite a huge lack of commitment, because I think for whatever reason, human nature, we are accountable to a boss, we're accountable to someone in a higher position than us. But when you are a volunteer, there's not necessarily that accountability. Or when you're working for yourself, sometimes it's hard to be accountable for yourself. So that lack of commitment is a real thing. And it's something that I think when you can get people in your team, again, tied to the team's vision of where you want to go, and also find out what their role is in that and how important they are to creating that vision, or what it is they personally want to achieve as a result of that. That's where you can really start to build commitment. If they're emotionally connected to it, if they can see the outcome that's going to benefit them, that's really where you can start to, create greater commitment.
Yeah, that kind of ties into the next one, avoidance of accountability.
Yeah.
So yeah. The last one is inattention to results.
Inattention to results. So again, my personality style, I'm not a numbers person. I'm very much an emotional leader, driven by results, I guess, but it's driven more results that show people success. So not keeping track of my numbers, things like that. But I can tell you that when I do keep track of numbers, when I am paying close attention to those drivers in my business, the things that create the results for success, I am more successful. So really watching that and teaching other people how to do the same, because it's not something that comes very naturally to other people, myself included. So having to learn that, having to really teach that to other people has helped to create that measure of success. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you. My next question is, how did you, well, I kind of answered this a little bit already, but how did you kind of what was the first thing that you first stepped into?
First leadership role? It's funny, first leadership role, I think being the oldest in my family, so I was the oldest child in my immediate family. I'm the oldest granddaughter of a very, very large family. There's 26 grandchildren. It was just kind of a natural leadership role. They maybe called me bossy, let's be honest, because, but I think that's really kind of unknowingly I was leading, even though I didn't maybe realize I was leading at that time. I would say my first official leadership title probably would have been when I sat on, student council when I was in school and became the president of the students council, and that was when my peers had seen me in a leadership role and voted me into that leadership role. And so taking responsibility for organizing events and organizing people and getting everybody to come together for a common vision. Those were probably my earliest experiences in leadership, and camp counselor, but that was fun, right? Yeah. That was all fun. That was about bringing the kids together and having fun, but those were my first experiences.
Okay. My next question is, do you have any set values that you always bring into a leadership role, and have those values changed since?
Yeah, so I would say one value that I carry today as a leader is authenticity. And being who you are, standing up for the things that you believe in. And I would say that's not necessarily a value that I had when I was a young leader. I think when I was a young leader, I tried to please other people, and I tried to be who they wanted me to be, and I tried to fit the role that I thought they wanted me to be in. And what I found over the years as a leader, that when I am my authentic self, when I lean into the natural giftings that I have, when I focus on adding value to people, which really is, I think, one of the biggest things, that's when I'm the most effective. Not trying to please everybody around me, but just truly being authentic, leaning into the things that I value. And so what are the things that I value and always valued, but didn't always be authentic about it? Adding value to people. I think that when we can add value to people, we make such a huge difference in our world, because my company's motto is changing lives one party at a time. And if I can change that life, and I truly believe this, when I can change the life of that woman by giving her more confidence, creating more financial freedom for her, giving her the ability to become a stronger leader herself, be more independent, I can change the life of her family and in turn her community. And I know it seems really crazy, but the world, because when we have more powerful women and more powerful women as leaders, we can really impact this world. And so that was something I didn't always authentically do when I was a new leader, because I was trying to be who I thought people wanted me to be. But always adding value. I think if you can add value to people and make a difference for other people, you're going to go a long ways in this world. So adding value, honesty, integrity, those are two really big things that I think as a leader are super important. If you can be honest, live with integrity, always do the right thing, even though the right thing maybe doesn't feel right, because of pressures from people around you, pressures of expectation from your company, but always do the right thing. Do the right thing for the right reasons. You're never gonna go wrong, even though it's not popular. So do those right things. And leading with intention. You need to know where you're going. You need to live that life of intention. You need to know what it is you're trying to accomplish. I've seen lots of leaders come into our business and they're very charismatic and they're very, engaging, but they lacked vision. So they're effective for a short term, but they're not effective long term because they didn't have the ability to take people and show them where to go and give them that direction. And so, or intention, it was always short term, short benefit, not this long-term commitment to something that had intention, that this is where we're going to get to, we got to stay the course. And so to me, those things are really, really important. But number one is authenticity. Be who you were made to be and lean into your authenticity, because that's what's naturally going to draw the people to you.
Yeah. And I feel like I struggle with that, especially this year being my first year of coming in. I've not really grasped on my abilities to be a leader, I think, and still learning what works, what not works. But I definitely have realized more things as the year has gone by. So yeah,
for sure. And I think the biggest thing I can say to you is you're young, right? And again, just be true to who you are, knowing that who you are is the most important thing. That, maybe you're a quiet leader, and that's okay. Quiet leadership is just effective as that loud and boisterous leader, that charismatic leader. Because again, if you're leading for the right reasons, you're doing the right things, you're sticking by your moral compass and the things you believe in, that in long term will make the biggest difference. Not easy to do when you're young, yes. Because we're easily swayed, but you'll get there. When you're old like me, it'll be easier.
Yes. Okay, my next question is, when were times where you felt like so strong in your position, and then times when you didn't?
They're probably very similar things. Times when I feel really effective as a leader and strong as a leader is when I can see that I'm having an impact on other people. So when I can see that through coaching, through working with that person, that they're making strides towards their goals, their achievements, the things they want to do. When I start to see a change in them, they're becoming more confident, they're becoming stronger as a parent, as a leader, with their team, working with other people, whatever it is, that's when I feel great as a leader. That's when I'm confident. On the flip side of that, when I pour lots of time and energy into people and it doesn't have any effect, there's no growth, there's no changing, I just feel like I'm banging my head against the wall, is when I feel the weakest as a leader. And this last couple of years in my business has really felt that way. And I know I've said this even to people that I work with, not my people that work with me on my own team, but maybe my peers or my leaders, is that I don't feel I'm being effective because I don't have anyone to work with, right? I don't have those people that want to come in and make change. And so I'm really struggling currently as that leader because I don't necessarily have people that want what I have to offer. They're not taking the coaching. They don't want it. They're status quo. They're happy. And so for me as a leader, it's been really difficult to learn, how do I work with and amongst people that aren't necessarily motivated to want more? And how do I just continue to build engagement, keep these people moving as a team and keep us moving forward when they personally don't necessarily want that? So I think it's kind of a little bit of both. I feel empowered when they take what I have to offer and they run with it, and I see them becoming more confident. That makes me feel success as a leader. Flip side, when I'm offering those same things to everybody and nobody seems to want it, that's when I don't feel great about what I'm doing at all.
Do you feel like the pandemic kind of affected that more over the last couple of years too?
Yeah, I do. I really have seen a change just in the way, in people's behavior, in their expectations of what they want, kind of in both ways. Some people have just become very apathetic, that this is as much as we're ever going to have and we're just going to stay here and we live status quo. I've also seen a change in people's work ethic over the last few years. I feel that the drive for a lot of people has been lost, and I'm not sure, I'm not a sociologist, I'm not a psychologist, right? But just my own personal experience, I really do see a lack of, they don't really see that success is attainable, that it's theirs. There's really kind of this movement of, let's just all just stay here. And if we all just stay here, we'll be fine. And that's different. Pre-COVID, there was a real sense of urgency to get ahead, to want more, to be more. And today it seems to be a little less than that, at least in my industry, that we're experiencing. So, yeah, for sure. I do think it did have an impact.
What are some strengths that you have recognized about you throughout the years?
Strengths that I have. I think one of my greatest strengths is my ability to relate to all people. I have an ability to connect with people. I can talk to anybody. People say you can sell ice to an Eskimo, but that's not so true, because I can only do that because I understand. I think I have a really great understanding of personality styles and understanding how to relate and engage. And I think that's one thing that every leader would benefit from, is just understanding what makes people tick. Knowing that, sorry, that's going to keep ringing. Knowing what makes someone tick. Like, I know that you tend to be a little quieter. You're not necessarily this boisterous, outgoing person all the time, although I've seen that part of you. Yeah. But knowing that and relating to you, as opposed to, I have 4 daughters. All 4 of my daughters are very different, even though they come from the same place. And relating to each of them differently. So I think that's one strength I have, is my ability to connect and relate to people, no matter where they're at. And again, I think that goes back to that core value I have of add value to people every day. Because I always want people to leave me better than they were when they came to me. So I think that's one strength that I have. It's that people first mentality, adding value to them, leading in that. Another strength that I believe I have as a leader is I'm very self-motivated most of the time. So I don't necessarily need someone over my head telling me what I need to do. I go and I just get it done. So being self-motivated, I think, is important. In business, in my business especially, to be driven and keep me moving forward. And I'm not afraid to work hard. And I think that that's something that it's a strength, It's also been a detriment, I have found, because generationally, my generation, the harder you worked, the further ahead you were going to get, things like that. Whereas I see your generation, my children's generation, that yes, they value hard work, but it's not necessarily the hours that you put in, or they also value rest, and they value, and that's something that our generation maybe didn't always value in the same way. So I think that's probably the flip side. The weakness is that sometimes I work too hard, right? It's sometimes hard to find that work-life balance. But again, a piece of advice I would give to you as a young leader is find work-life balance, because I've also learned over the years that rest is just as important as working hard, because if you don't rest, you don't recharge, you can't generate new ideas if you're overtired and you're burnt out, and rest is super important. So that's something I need to work on.
My other part of the question was weaknesses.
Yeah. A bit of a workaholic tendency, absolutely, that I tend to have. So like I said, finding that work-life balance, and for me, time management wasn't always my strength, something I have worked very, 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 very hard at over the years, and something though that if you can kind of master your time management, if you can figure out that balance between life and work. For me, my business, being a home-based business, they kind of become really intertwined all the time, and learning to separate those things. And that wasn't something I was always great at, and really, really, I've had to learn that. It's still not a natural skill. Same thing with the numbers thing, not a natural skill. Those are things I've had to learn. I have learned over the years, though, that sometimes don't always play to your weakness, but if you can improve your weaknesses, you will be a better leader. I would never say, oh, put me in a role where numbers is all I do all day. You're not going to get the best of me. But if I can become better in that area, then I can be a better leader and more effective, because then I can relate to the people too that is their life and that's what they want to do, have a better understanding. I think another weakness that I have, and I've watched this, especially this last couple of years, is I am my biggest critic as a leader. I can be very hard on myself, and sometimes can't recognize when I am being effective, because I'm expecting better results. I should be doing more. It should look like this, and sometimes not just accepting that sometimes little growth is just as important as seeing big leaps and bounds, and I can be very critical of myself.
I agree with that too. Definitely with I'm always trying to want to grow, but then there's also that barrier that's people what are people gonna think? What if I do something wrong? Stuff like that.
For sure. And I would just tell you, just go for it, right? Just go for it. If I had known 30 years ago what I know today, I probably would have done things a little bit differently. But I lived probably that first, I'm gonna say even 15 years of my adult life living for other people's expectations. What are people going to think of me? Oh my gosh, I can't do that, right? If I had known then to just go for it, not worry about what other people thought. There's a great Mel Robbins book right now called Let Them. Living by that philosophy of let them, let people talk about you, let them. It's really hard when you're a people leader, when you're worried about making everybody happy. That's really, really difficult. But if you can get past that, and just as a young leader, if you think that's something that is going to make a difference and it's something you want to do, go for it, right? And don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think that's also a huge thing for someone as a young leader, is don't be afraid to make mistakes. I was so rigid when I first started in my role that this is how it has to be. I remember one time, this is crazy, another leader who was having success, and so I was kind of following her and mentoring, asking her for mentorship. What are you doing? And not realizing in the moment that we were completely different leadership styles. But she's like, well, I just went into this meeting and I just told them, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to be your leader and help you get results, and da 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 da. So I'm like, well, how did you do that? So she gave me like this plan that she had done for this leadership meeting she did. And yeah, I just blindly followed that. It was a disaster. It was a disaster. I had people in my team who didn't speak to me for months, like literally months. And I was like the devil incarnate to them. They were so angry with me because I had been the leader up to that point, that I led by not necessarily being their friend, but valuing them as people. And but all of a sudden, because somebody else said this is how they were getting success, I thought, oh, I'm going to do that. And I wasn't being authentic to who I was as a leader. I wasn't necessarily valuing my people for what they brought to me. And yeah, so don't always do something just because somebody else says to do it, or because they're having success that way. You need to find your own way. Take those snippets of things they share with you, but always look at it, okay, am I being authentic to my core values, right? Am I adding value to people? My gosh, like I look back at that, and the minute I said, I'm not here to be your friend, I'm here to be your leader, that totally went against everything I believed in, but I was so blinded by the success in that moment from this other person who I thought was, oh my gosh, she's the best. And that really blinded me. So that was an aha moment, for sure.
Okay, well, that's pretty much our time.
Did we get through 30 minutes?
Yeah,
We did?
that's our time.
Okay, yay!
So, thank you for coming in with
You're
me
welcome.
and sharing your values and strengths and beliefs and stuff like that. I really appreciate that, and I will take everything into consideration, and hopefully can keep growing to be a leader.
You're going to be a great leader, Eva. I know you will be. That was easy.
Yeah.
It's a really good minute.
Yeah, well, I didn't feel like 30
No.
minutes. Like,